What are your thoughts on the budget balanced amendment and the line item veto?
All right, line item veto, I'm all for it, but it isn't going to solve our problem, okay? I mean, it's going to take a constitutional amendment. That means you got to get 2/3 of the House, 2/3 of the Senate, 3/4 of states. I'm fine for it. Most states have it, but you know, it's small potatoes. It's small potatoes with regard to our problem. Let's take cut, cap, and balance. All right, which is, you know, first you got to understand that bills aren't necessarily what they say they are. You know, the name that it's called, you got to actually read the bill because sometimes it's different.
Is that true?
Some know better than others about it. Look, the other thing you got to understand is the words that Washington uses don't mean the same thing as Webster's dictionary. Let me give you an example. When Congress says cut, they're talking about reducing the rate of increase. They're not talking about cutting. When Congress talks about trust funds, going back to the earlier question, you can't trust them. They're not funded. Okay? So, in the end, cut, yes, I think we ought to cut discretionary spending back to 2008 levels, adjusted for inflation, all right, adjusted for inflation over several years. That's a cut. I think we need to reduce the rate of increase in spending. Cap. I think we need to cap how much in federal revenues rather than cap the spending. Let me tell you why. We have three real problems. One, economic growth. Number two, healthcare costs. Number three, interest rates. And I think it's more feasible to cap how much revenue the government can take rather than how much it will spend, because we can't control what economic growth is. We can't control what directly healthcare costs or interest rate assumptions. Okay, and so I think if you tried to do it the way that they were talking about, it's not feasible. It's not sustainable. Balance, I'm all for it, provided you have an exception for declared war, which we haven't done since World War II, which is another problem, and depression, you know, serious, you know, national emergency or something like that. So, you know, so cut, cap, and balance can work if it's defined properly. The problem is many times they aren't defined properly. By the way, I think we need a credit card limit, a constitutional amendment on how much debt as a percentage of the economy this country can take on. We need a credit card.
Everybody here has a credit card. That's right. I think it might be helpful before we go on, I'll go to you next, Doug, but to talk about the percent of revenue or the percent of spending to GDP as it is now, but what it is traditionally at around 20% where we are currently.
Let me give you a sense, some metrics. Today, spending as a percentage of the economy is 25% of GDP, of the economy. The historical average over the last 30 years or so is about 20.5%. Understand, the size of government is based on the size of spending, not size of taxes. Because of what I said before, if the government spends it, sooner or later you're going to pay for it. You're either going to pay for it now or you're going to pay for it later. Let me give you a benchmark. In 1800, the federal government was 2% of the size of the economy. It's now 25%. By 2040, if we follow the path that's on here, it'll be 40%. By the time you add state and local government, government will be over 50% of the economy. That can't happen. The question is, when are we going to change course?
This is a good point because in some ways it begs the question about what type of tax system you're going to have, because you can only squeeze a certain amount of revenues out of the economy, no matter where taxes fall.
Well, we have to decide, what do we want government to do? All right? How much is it going to cost? And then how are we going to raise the revenues to do that? You know, because ultimately, if you make promises and you can't fund the promises, they're a false promise. You got to have enough revenue to pay your bills and deliver on the promises you intend to keep.
And it's in reverse order now. Yeah, Doug, go ahead.
Do you think that the mortgage interest deduction is going to be on the table?
I think it will be, and it should be. And let me give you an example of what I think might be a way forward on the mortgage interest deduction, which is in this report. These are illustrative proposals. It's not a plan. It's for discussion purposes. First, right now you get a deduction for 2 houses. I would respectfully suggest 1 house is a need, 2 houses is a want. get rid of the second house deduction. Secondly, right now you get a deduction for up to $1 million. Where did that come from? All right? I would respectfully suggest that the average price of housing in Lincoln is different than it is in Fairfield County, Connecticut. All right? And so therefore, I think we need to be more intelligent to say, one home, maximum conforming mortgage, which varies by region of the country, and nowhere is it $1 million. So therefore, what you're basically doing is you're saying, I'm going to provide a subsidy for affordable housing, recognizing that affordable housing varies by different part of the country. That would be more rational, it would be more affordable, it would be more sustainable.
All right, let's go. Yes, ma'am. In the corner. Yes. In black.
Yeah, I'm interested in hearing your logic in comparing the current economy to the economy of 1800. Obviously, there's going to be an increase. It seems like it's kind of a manipulation.
Yeah. Look, there's absolutely no question that A, the nature of the United States economy and the position of the United States in the world today versus 1800 is very different. In 1800, we were based on agriculture. That's still pretty big out here, okay? But we were based on agriculture. In 1800, we didn't have an income tax. The income tax didn't come into existence until 1913, all right? We were funded through excise taxes, through trade and tariffs and things of that nature, all right? In 1800, we were a new nation. We weren't a superpower, okay? We had a lot smaller population. We took up a lot less of the continent than we do today. So I'm not saying that we should use 1800 as a benchmark at all. All I'm trying to tell you is that the government is now 12.5 times bigger today as a percentage of the economy than 1800. It should be a lot bigger for a lot of reasons, but I think it shouldn't be 12.5 times
So
bigger.
the comparison then is illogical.
No, it's
Well, no, I'm just trying to show, all I'm trying to do there is I'm just trying to give you an illustration of how much the government has grown. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, I'm just trying to give you an illustration. I think it's grown too big. And the other thing I'm trying to do is I'm trying to say, well, forget about where we are, where are we headed? We're headed to 40%. And then if you add state and local government, it's over 50. The government would be over 50% of the economy. I can assure you that while the government plays an important role, and I'm not an anti-government person, I think government has an important role to play in many different ways, all right? But it's not the engine of growth and innovation and job creation. It's not.
Yes.
Has there been any serious discussion about the needs of the aging population versus the birth control mentality in the U.S. and Europe?
Well, first, the two biggest challenges that we face on spending are demographics, the aging of the population, and the decline in the worker to retiree ratio. In 1950, there were 16 people paying into Social Security for every person drawing benefits. Today, it's 3.2 to 1. By 2030 to 35, it'll be 2 to 1 and stable. The second, and people are living longer. The second biggest problem is healthcare costs. Healthcare costs grow faster than inflation and faster than the economy when the economy grows. We're the only major industrialized nation that doesn't have a budget for healthcare. Nobody else is dumb enough to do that. We have to have a budget for healthcare. We've got to change our promises. We've got to change our delivery systems, our payment systems. So yes, people have to focus. And frankly, we're in better shape than many Western European nations on demographics. We're in worse shape on healthcare, much worse on healthcare. We spend double what they do and have below average outcomes. So the answer is not throwing more money at a system where you spend double the money and get below average outcomes. By the way, there's another one that we do that. Anybody want to guess? K through 12 education. We spend double, we get below average outcomes. That varies by state, varies by district.